So, so, good evening, everyone. This is Michael Naylor, and I'm the director of the Maine Enneagram Center for Transformation and Change, and I'm calling from South Portland, Maine, where it's been an awesome, beautiful day here, and I have the pleasure of having my friend Anna, a Type 8, who's abiding in Freiburg, to share a little bit about her experience, her growth and maturation with the Type 8 pattern. So welcome. Great to
Thank you.
have you here. You look very healthy and alive and vibrant. And so, maybe just to start in with, maybe when you learned about the Enneagram, and more especially when you started, discovering that you have some of these traits that the Type 8 works with, and just how you've worked with them, and what's been the agony, what's been the ecstasy, and all of that good stuff. So just take it where you'd like, and I'll just ask questions along the way.
Sounds good. Okay.
Awesome.
So I remember that the Enneagram work was being done around First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church. And I don't remember who first, whether it was you. I think it was you. You were doing a workshop there.
I was.
So you did a workshop at First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church. And I think that's the first I heard of it.
And you came to the workshop, I think.
I did.
Yeah.
I came to the workshop, and then I, we did what we do, and I figured out that, oh yeah, this is an 8. And then in addition to you, then there was someone on the board, and I was on the board who worked really closely with Enneagram work too. So there was a lot of support around for a few years of my life for this. I don't know that tool is the right word, but for this way of understanding ourselves.
Yeah. Well, what was it like to discover that you were a Type 8?
Very validating.
Awesome.
And, like my whole life, I experienced myself as being like too much, and like coming on too strong sometimes, and feeling very like passionate about things. And, and so in my early 20s, I started doing a lot of nonviolent communication training, because I like my heart was in the right place. I was very involved in social justice activism at the time. And, but I just couldn't figure out why was I having this experience with people where I would speak up and they would be like, oh, like you're being so self-righteous. Like I didn't feel like I was being self-righteous. So I did a lot of work to make sure I kind of knew some skills about how do I speak in ways that are easiest to hear if it doesn't come so easily to hear strong statements from people.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so I had that experience of myself as like a sort of a strong personality, but also I wanted to connect with people. I didn't want to repel people. I didn't want people to feel like threatened by me, or like I was trying to tell them what to do. So when I got to the Enneagram, I was like, oh yes, this is okay. Yes, this is right. Like I am totally what I've come to describe myself now as direct, but but I also know that it's confrontational. I'm not afraid to have hard conversations. And in fact, what I've trained myself to do is to be quiet. And I work on the other end. Well, some people have to work to speak up. I work on, it's all right. We don't act like we could maybe not ever have this conversation, or let's just wait to make sure it's a time that works for both of us.
Awesome. So when you sometimes Type 8 little girls sometimes feel like, the culture they grow up in is always trying to tamp down their energy, because, 8s are like, bold as birth and let's go. And when they feel something, they feel it full out. And some folks love that intensity, and others are like, quiet it down. That's like too much. So, I mean, what do you remember as a little one?
So I'm just noticing, did you notice my picture go out?
Yeah. That's okay.
Okay, so that's low power mode. And also your voice is sounding a little echoey. Are you concerned about that? Do we want to check in about that?
So a little echoey.
Or
Okay.
like tinny?
Tinny. Yeah, I'm not sure what to do about that in particularly. So we'll just go with
Okay,
it.
okay, yeah, so I do, I'm just gonna plug in my phone. I do remember that. I was just telling the story to some of the folks I work with about how when I was younger, the teacher assigned older kids to play with me. Because I was not having an easy time attracting friends in my age group.
Oh,
So she found these older kids who would play with me on the playground, and they became my friends.
oh, okay. Well, smart teacher.
Yes, and somebody, when I was telling the story, one of my workmates was like, "Oh, you poor thing, you must have felt so embarrassed." And I didn't. I felt like cared for, and I felt like, "Oh, good, now I have some friends to play with."
Awesome, awesome. So, um, you know, I hear that you developed some strategies for not reacting too quickly, too strongly, like learning some restraint, which,
Mhm.
that's one of the pieces of um, advice or suggestion, right? Can you learn restraint? And do you have to die on this battlefield, or can you wait? Um, but prior to learning that, I imagine you've had some interesting confrontations with people. And one of the things that I've noticed about AIDS is when they believe something, they feel it so strongly, and people around them like often feel like there's no room for my voice. Um,
Yeah.
the type A's they've made their mind up when maybe they haven't. They're just so passionate about where they stand that people can kind of wither and disappear or get scared. Sometimes the energy, the kind of natural courage of the ape can scare people away. So, like, what's been your experience with that?
It's so true. Well, let me first ask, is it common to have an eight to be an eight and then also be have a lot of physical energy?
Yes, they go.
Okay.
They tend to go hand in glove. Lots of energy.
So, yeah. So it can be just like you said, some people, I've had people tell me I'm being controlling and or that I am not listening. And having done so, I'm not saying that there's not opportunities when I don't listen. There's certainly times where someone will tell me something like, yeah, I didn't get that. But what's interesting to me is that there are people will tell me that at times when I am listening. Like I'm not saying I'm perfect, but it is um in my healthiest expression of myself, even I'm listening. And there's something about when I'm clear, I can't help it. I'm so clear, which doesn't mean I'm not listening. And it does turn some people off. And like this just happened maybe like a year ago where I had a coworker who, boy, she just kept saying, "You're not listening." And I was like, and I said, "Well, how can I reassure you I'm listening? Can I?" So like I tried things like repeating back what she said. And I said, "Do you think maybe the issue is that I'm just not agreeing with you?" And like try, ultimately though, my experience was she just wasn't in a very healthy place. And me being in a healthy place and being okay with where I was coming from was just not good for her. And so I sometimes make decisions, you know what? That's okay. Like I don't need to win everyone's approval. I don't need everyone to feel like I'm the nicest, most warm. If my comfort with myself and my okayness with myself is uncomfortable for you, that's okay too. And maybe we'll just part ways there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I wonder, one of the things that I notice about eights is that they have a natural or just compelling intensity that comes off of them. It's like there's a force field that eights have
Mhm.
that, without saying a word, some people are like ducking and booking it out the back door because of that instinctive energy. I would say that type 8 is an instinctive type and really in contact with their gut center and their, and so sometimes, eights will say, geez, I'm just hanging out here and people are, you know, disappearing or not talking or getting scared and I'm not even saying anything. I said, well, all you can do is just notice that your presence. My experience around eights is I feel their presence. It's like when they walk through a room, it's almost like the Red Sea parts. There's just something about the confidence, the gut energy, the passion that's really natural to them, but isn't natural to other types.
Mhm.
And so people have a tendency like to either love them or just not want to be around them. There can be kind of I'm with you or I'm not with you at all. So what has been your experience about noticing their intensity?
Yeah, well, part of it is that some people will like it because they want to like use it for themselves.
Uh-huh.
And I'm actually quite willing to share my energy with people or harness my energy on behalf of someone else's well-being or cause or something in ways that are mutual and they work. So, but I also have to be careful, or I've had to be careful over like, because sometimes people are attracted to me for that because they want it, sort of, they get their energy, and it's almost like I just got to watch for that dynamic because that can be a little like I could end up feeding something that maybe isn't the best thing to be feeding. If that does that make sense?
Yeah, well, it sounds like there's some folks who are kind of vampires that
Yeah.
want to suck the energy and there they see you full of energy and think, something they're drawn to it. And so that's a great thing to notice. Well, the other thing you mentioned earlier is the idea around directness. And, eights are known for just cutting through the BS, cut to the chase. This is what's going on, or this is how I feel. And sometimes it is so absolutely necessary for that kind of bold, blunt truth telling. Uh, and but also they just naturally go with directness, and that can shake some people up. Like it's too much truth too clearly. Uh, so when you find yourself stressed, like hurt, afraid, feeling shame, do you notice that the type 8 dragon in you comes up and you've got a lot of fire to, you know,
Oh yes. And I was saying I work with a psychic health practitioner right now, and I said to her, I got to watch out because, and this is the way I put it, I could really do a number on someone. Like, and I'm not proud of that at
yeah,
all, but like if somebody were in a low spot and I got triggered somehow and I was like, who do you think you are? Because you are feeling this way. Now you're going to turn around and project it on me. And I could just, if I weren't mindful about my own reactivity, I could like give them a little pop psych read that would be very unflattering and could be devastating and really hurtful
yeah,
as a way of like pushing it back, like
yeah,
getting it away from me. And I feel like I've done that. I can think of a couple times where I did that, particularly in work situations where I wasn't feeling quite so much like I had to like care for this, like um, this was years ago, but I had somebody when I was working in the Riverton Park public housing neighborhood, somebody from the public housing, uh, I think it's okay to just say like insulted me in front of a group of the work I was doing and how I was doing it. And I waited because I couldn't even respond at the time because I was so upset. But then I wrote a letter to him and CC'd his supervisor, basically like, who are you? And like, do you know who you're messing with? And my supervisor at the time, my supervisor said, do you really think that was necessary? Like, do you think that maybe you turned it on a little too? And I was like, nope. I think it was necessary. I don't think I turned it on.
Yeah.
Like, I want to let him know he needs to back off. And that was my way of letting him know and letting his supervisor know. And and I'm not saying there's not a time or place for that, but back then that was purely like, I wasn't thinking of him like who with his own wounds and like how that might, I was just thinking, all right, I don't want that to ever happen to me again. Never should have happened in the first place.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, not only was I in the position of feeling like I was protecting myself, but I felt like I was protecting all the kids I was serving who he was insulting
Yes.
and using me to say, see how these kids are acting, that's on you. And so I felt this, where I would do things differently that time. And so when a similar kind of work situation came up a couple years ago, and actually it came up like maybe 4 years ago too, where somebody was just not liking me, I've been able to act like make it kind of emotionally neutral, like just wait and vent, to like a friend or something, and then think about really what's the best way to respond to this on behalf of everybody. Like, I
Yeah.
don't need like, do a number on this person or like fight back. That's not even consistent with how I know myself to be. That's just reacting in a fancy way, using my energy and my brain to basically take someone down.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome that you're aware of it. And, one of the challenges, one of the things I notice is that, these patterns get activated and used when we're kids, little kids, and they're just sort of innate. And depending on the kind of maybe emotional suffering we've gone through, uh, we have a faster reaction pattern. But nonetheless, when you were a little girl, you didn't sign up for having a reaction pattern in which you could eviscerate somebody because they were just idiots and they needed to be reminded, right? But
Right.
um, but also, am I losing you there? No,
Yeah, I don't know what happened. My screen froze, so I just,
okay.
am I back?
Yeah, you're back. That's awesome.
Okay.
So, um, so one of the sort of stories that we tell about the type 8 is that as little kids, they had a sense of that they were on their own, that they were going to have to protect themselves. They were going to have to be strong to survive. And that there was, on some unconscious level, a sense of feeling like I'm rejected. And so the way I'm going to deal with the rejection is I'm going to take charge of my life, and hey, I'll reject you first. That's a vulnerable place to me. So I'm not even going to worry about that. You're already rejected, so don't even bother me with it, right? So there's like sort of and it's an unconscious thing, but it basically says, don't mess with me. And in advance, I will let you know. And but I wonder if that was a pattern. Does that resonate for you as how you might have been wired as a little girl?
Yeah, definitely in terms of being really independent and feeling like, oh, my poor mother. And I say that with love. Like, she's just, her way is different than mine. And so when I was her first child, she was young. And I think it was quite overwhelming. Her biggest thing that she would say to me, I wish you'd have a kid just like you. And I can remember like being like, saying back to her, I hope I do too. I'd love a kid like me. Like, even knowing that, like at 6, like that's not a very nice thing to say. Like, so, and I have always been very independent. And in terms of that, like rejecting, I don't know that I reject. I think it's just that the pattern has been I stay so independent that there really isn't like, so that the cost is minimized anyway, because, well, I never really got to I never really got dependent or so interdependent with someone that
Yeah.
it's such an issue.
Yeah.
And if you look at my relationship patterns, the longest relationship I've been in with someone is 6 years. And I don't see that as a problem. I've kind of accepted that, like, I tend to grow with people, and then, it could be the people I'm picking. And then it's like, okay, well, we're parting ways now. And I also feel like I have been really hurt. Um, recently, when I say recent, I mean the past 10 years, like having a couple breakups where I was just like so sad about it. So, which kind of reassured me, like, oh yeah, I can be, and I am vulnerable, and I can be sad and cry and
Mm.
just be like totally like, this stinks. And
Mm.
yeah, so I don't, in terms of, maybe it's about like the people I'm picking, that like, oh, pick people that it's not going to work long term, so then you don't have to worry about rejecting. But I guess I haven't thought about it that much. Just, I think my awareness is more like keeping my heart open, not being so heady, not being so or action oriented, that I'm not like really checking in with, okay, how am I feeling? Like, rather than jumping to anger,
Mhm.
asking myself, why am I angry? Am I angry because I'm sad? Am I angry because I'm afraid? I'm like reminding myself, that's like, Anna, just feel those feelings. That's okay. And I think probably being a type 8 has initiated leading me into like all kinds of like healing that I'm so grateful for, because I wouldn't be who I am today. And I like myself, and I like, being how I am. And if that includes a type 8, like, that's fine with me.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think, you know, the that awareness, sort of a big growth edge for eights is because they're so wired to be independent and actually to not be dependent on other people. And there can be a sort of an unconscious understanding that I'm not supposed to be weak or vulnerable. And right, that's not a part of my uh, way of being in the world. I'm strong, and and I don't need you. I may want to be with you, but I don't need. If you think I need you, well, take another guess, because I can take care of myself. And it seems angels say that learning to feel their heart and allow it to come forward, it has been a lot of, it had to do a lot of inner work to get to it, because their tendency is to kind of seal off and go into action and take charge, and maybe not pause and go, oh, wait a second, like you mentioned it, for eights, when they're hurt, they often go right to anger.
Yeah.
And learning to notice, oh, what's the anger connected to? Oh, what's my heart, and I feel hurt. So that's how did you go about learning that? I mean, was any particular, as it just sort of you evolved that way, or?
No, I think it's I'm imagining, like, because I can remember um this, I can remember when I was still feeling like, oh, I don't want to take anybody's help. Like, when I was living in Portland, when I was very involved in the UU church, and I had to have this operation, and I needed help. I like couldn't take care of myself after. And how I sort of reconciled with, I need help, and I need a lot of help. And I'm going to be asking someone, or in someone's for help. And just like that kind of like, now that we're talking about it, I feel like, boy, that's probably why that whole thing happened to me, is because that helped me, because I'm good with asking for help. Um, and when I say good, I'm not saying I ask for help a lot, but when I need help, I can just like, I need help, you know. I'm just so blessed because I don't feel like I need help that much. I have a lot of supports in my life. And so, whatever the help might be, it seems to just come. And so but I did get that lesson. And I think just because out of necessity, and I had enough like people around, like healthy people around, knowing like, okay, this is hard for me. Everybody asks for help. I've got to be able to ask for help. And really what happened is people just were offering help for so long that it just took a while for me to really need help and have to ask for it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
thankfully it happened.
Yeah. Well, it seems that my experience with AIDS is they just have a natural capacity to be self-reliant and to take responsibility for things and usually they're very good at it. They take charge. They don't want to be a burden to anybody, and so it seems like a natural gift that AIDS have, and uh, and I think the learning to receive help and feel one's emotions, that is a growth edge for AIDS, and most of us go into these growth edges when the universe ties our hands and pins us to the ground and says, "Now you must do this," and we do it. Uh, so uh, so for
You know,
you, go ahead.
well, and like about this whole thing about being naturally self-reliant, I was just thinking that the thought came about how you got to ask for help to be in relationship with people. I mean, I can't always be the one giving help. And I'm so naturally, because I have a lot of energy, willing to help. I've learned like at the very least, I've got to share like my emotional things. Even if I'm okay, I might make a point of telling somebody a struggle that I actually don't feel like I need to share, but I need to remind people and myself, like I'm vulnerable. I'm having a hard time with this. Or even if I wouldn't naturally do that, I remind like people like helping me.
Mm,
So I remind myself I'm being vulnerable, not just on my own behalf, but for the good of our relationship. So there's a sense of mutuality and like reciprocity.
mm,
And so that I'm in relationships with other healthy people, not people that are just like needing me. Because and
mm.
and it's also like nice, like I have a family member, like I make a point of kind of telling her like what's not going so well for me, because I noticed that's what works best for her. Not overly, I don't go over the top, but just sometimes it's just like people like to know that I have struggles because they think I'm never struggling. So I just make a point of saying like, this is what's hard for me right now.
That's a great strategy because people do have a sort of assume with AIDS that they got it handled and that they don't need help and because they're powerful and confident that people don't always understand that they got a heart and they get hurt and it might be less than other people but it still happens.
Hmm.
um, one aide I was talking to said, the problem for me is that when my energy is too much, I don't know about it until afterwards. And I have to, the way I listen to when I'm getting amped up is in my body. I'll feel my body getting tense. And then there are some people in my life who will come up and tell me, you're too intense, you're hitting too hard. Can you tone it down a little bit? So do you have a way of noticing when your sort of passion is getting too amplified or too big or searing the hair off of people's heads? I mean, how do you work with that?
Well, so I think it's relevant to share that my teacher, my like master guru is Muji,
Mhm.
and it's an Advaita teaching, and it's all about basically just he's just always pointing us to the truth of who we are, and that it's not our ego or our person. We suffer when we believe we're a person, when we understand that when we experience being the awareness of that person, the awareness of everything. That's freedom. So I'm mentioning this because I'm blessed to have been following his pointings pretty rigorously for several years. And so what I've noticed happening is that a lot of the personal wiring becomes less of an issue because I'm not so invested in any of it. Um, it's not bad. None of it's bad. It's just not so amped up. Like none of it is as amped up anymore. And so what I've been working on is kind of like being okay with not being all fired up and amped up. It's kind of like I used to work in community mental health, and I would work with people with a bipolar diagnosis who really liked the mania, and I was like, I can understand that, like I like having energy. I like being fired up. There's something, and I also know that it can be a little overwhelming to people. And I remember that happening at First Parish, actually, like overwhelming people. They thought I was on drugs. Like I was way too passionate. And just learning how to, okay, speak less, ask more questions. I got to channel my passion into questions and like to share it, because otherwise it's just, what are people going to do with this? And so that was kind of and so in terms of learning how, when am I getting, the other thing also, and it's all related, and I hope this feels like I'm answering your question.
Yeah, you're doing
So,
great.
I've been putting myself in jobs all the time that want me to do that. They like me they're looking for someone who's like passionate and, clear. See, another nice way of saying confrontational, clear, direct. And who likes to like support other people kind of, or like problem solve. So I'm sharing all that to say that I've sort of directed that energy very purposefully into like vocational things, like being a yoga teacher and really needing to like inspire people through rigorous practice, or working with community mental health, people who are coming in because they want some help, or right now working at an adult day center as the activities director, like, all right, let's get this party started. So it's been a while since I've had to watch that. And I think that I'm just, because of the Muji teaching, I'm just so aware. I'm always asking myself, like, who's speaking? Like, is this who, like, what's the agenda? As righteous as the agenda might be. Like, I used to be very involved in politics, and I quickly noticed, I'm getting way too fired up about this. I'm just as bad as the people on the other side. Like, and so I like just kind of dialed back from that a little bit to learn some things. So I've been working on that so long so that I could be, okay with myself and have friends, and that I don't have like too many like direct examples of it now. It was just, it was anxiety, I think. I would get anxiety. Like if I was feeling anxiety, I was probably too amped up about how something had to go.
Well, we often say that type 8s burn very hot internally. It's like they have this intensity that they're born with, and learning to manage it well. I mean, it's kind of like, if something's intense, it's like, oh boy, I love this intensity. Let's amp it up a little more. That just charges me up. It's like, it can be like an adrenaline rush or a drug. It's like, and so even in confrontation, it's like, oh, confrontation, give me some of that. I'm okay with confrontation, right? And if I have to kick your ass, I will. But I love this intensity. So, you got the wrong person if you think you're going to get somebody to back down, because I get lit up with it. But it's like sort of this noticing, I think of all the types that 8 has been endowed with more instinctive energy and love of intensity. This, whether it's emotional, whether it's going on, I'm on my path and I'm all in. It's kind of like, I follow the Gurdjieff teachings, and Gurdjieff was a type 8, and one of his favorite expressions was, if you go, you're going to do something, do it whole hog. And if you go on a spree, pay the postage in advance and go for it. So there's a sense of whatever you're doing, 100%, give it 100%, whatever you're doing, even if it's just taking a sip of tea. Yeah, I'm 100% there, right? So, it can be also interesting that even in the stillness, there's like this type B energy there, this intensity. Like I can experience intense stillness. So it's an interesting thing to be sort of inherited. And I wonder sometimes if you notice that, well, other people don't seem to be quite wired this way. Like what's going on? I mean, what has that been like for you?
Yeah. And then how it shows up for me is I'm bored. I
Yeah,
get bored.
yeah.
Like, okay, so like what's going on? Like, and and so kind of like making friends with boredom as a like, oh, what's so bad? Like, what a gift, a blessing, boredom, or and that it's kind of like it's a secondary emotion anyway. It's not like there's some big problem going on, but that's like the flip side of the intensity, is just being like, okay, other people don't live like this and don't need like a whole plan. And then I've since discovered I don't need to have that kind of rush all the time either. I mean, there's almost like a little bit of a grieving process. Like I was telling you, like just through these years of following which is pointings, like a little bit like, okay, so now what? Like, all those, like, not only did I do 40 days of yoga, I did a year of yoga, and like, not only did I do landmark education, the first class, oh no, I did 3 years of classes, like everything, I was just like, I'll just get on the bus, I'm going to ride it and just like suck it up, like everything I can get, and then I'll step off. But I do, that's absolutely true. And finding that, even intensity with like with relationship, like, let's work it out. And then my most recent ex, I learned so much in my relationship with him because he was a major withdrawer. And so he really taught me, and I'm sure that's why I connected with him about like, just let things lie.
Hmm.
Like, okay. Like, I mean, believe me, I'm talking about it now like this, but initially it was like, what? That's not how you got to work things out. Come on, we need to talk. But,
Yeah.
and not everything needs to be
Hmm.
talked about. It's certainly not right away. Maybe everything does, but certainly not right away.
Yeah. Well, again, I hear some, it's like skillful restraint, just backing it up a little bit. Uh, and, but the other thing that around the eight is like they have a hunger for the truth. And who's telling the truth?
Oh,
And if people aren't telling the truth, they usually feel it viscerally before, and their system goes, there's a lie going on here, right? And then the eighth Eben will just go call it out right there, like you are bullshitting me. What are you doing? But there's that sense of I want to know who's real in the room, and when people aren't being real, I feel it. It's like an alarm goes off. So how's that been for you?
oh my gosh, that is so right on. First, I'll say that when I like was getting involved in social justice, because like my heart broke. I won't get into the story, but I went to Nicaragua. I saw the suffering in the world, and I was like, oh my gosh! And like then I was on a mission. This was at age like 19. And what my mission was is what is the most effective way to address this? What is the core issue? Like I really wanted to know how could this happen? That people could be suffering like this in one part of the world, and somebody else like me, a good person, would know nothing about it. And it was all about like getting at like the true, like what is the cause of this, and really wanted to figure that out. And then now how that also shows up, it's so funny because I was just sharing with a friend of mine about how it's like, oh, I'm building my website and just kind of like getting some independent services going again. And I said, I think my primary service is intuitive consulting. And so in this conversation with her about what I meant by intuitive consulting, and actually who I was talking with is a psychic. And so what so she had 2 near-death experiences. So anyway, so she was telling me what the spirits who connect with her, were telling her about me. And they were saying how Anna can see people's weak spots. And I like almost cried because it was so validating what I feel like you're saying is another way of saying the same thing. It's like saying when people are saying something false, if they're being inauthentic, I know, and I don't try to know. I've never tried to know that, but I can tell you're telling me something, but you're saying these words, but what's really going on? I have a natural, didn't work on it sense of that. And I've learned, right, to keep quiet. Nobody wants to be told something. Or I've learned ways of asking questions, which is another way, is if it seems effective. And I've also learned to be able to tell people don't even want to hear it. You can tell pretty quick. And I read this book by Chogyam Trungpa, Pema Chodron's teacher, and he talked about, this was so powerful for me, maybe like 10 or 12 years ago, about seeing people who don't want to be seen and how intrusive it feels to them and how hurtful that it's like you're putting a sword in someone. And that really woke me up to being more responsible with when I feel that way about just letting people have the dignity. If you don't want to be seen, that is fine.
Yeah.
And just because you came into my space, I mean, there's some negotiating to do. Like if you come into my space, you don't want to be seen and you're like trying to start something with me, right? That's one thing. I might ask some questions, rather than just leave them.
Yeah.
But that's that whole truth piece that you were, and how hard it is to just be with a falseness. But also this is why I was telling you, I really think that faith has helped me a lot, like just to really be like, they are on their path and they don't need me to speak a truth necessarily. And just because it's what I'm feeling, if they're not soliciting my feedback, then this is for me to just be quiet. It's not, I don't just go choose who I share that with. If it's meant to be, it'll be.
Well, it's interesting. In the Gurdjieff work, Gurdjieff being, I think, is a type 8, spoke along the same lines. He said, when you confront people about their stuff and they haven't asked for your help, you actually can rob them from having their own innate wish to transform arise in them by jumping them and attacking and ripping the cover off and saying you're a liar or whatever one says. And in the Gurdjieff work, they call it external considering. Really, in a sense, making people comfortable and not, charging in with my truth telling. I think type 4s, I'm a type 4, type 8s have a tendency like, I must tell the truth, or the truth isn't going to live without me speaking it to you right now. And I'm a gift from God. You just don't know it yet, right? And so there, and I used to blurt things all the time, thinking it was good for somebody, and it wasn't. But I was misguided, and learned now that if someone asks me, I can offer. But most people really aren't interested a lot of the time, and that's their trip. I don't have to wake them up. So you mentioned something about, I think, the forum, a landmark forum.
Yeah.
Did you go through S or landmark or the 6-day and all of that stuff?
Oh yeah, I did. There's like a curriculum for living. I forget. I did this, gosh, when I was married. So I did it in 2007 or maybe 2008 and 9. Yeah, I did a lot of I did the curriculum for living, which is 3.5 day courses. And then I did the communication curriculum, which is another couple. And then I did the team management leadership program, which is a 2-year course.
Yeah. Well, I did a lot of work with the landmark forum, and so it's always interesting to meet somebody who's actually had some experience with it. So that's very interesting. And
oh yeah, I feel so grateful. Like I kind of felt like it was like cognitive behavioral therapy a little bit. But you know, when I was done, I was done. Like I felt like I got so much out of it. It was so enriching, and I used the skills all the time in my life. Then I just experienced, like, at a certain point, it's like, okay, I've learned, I learned what you are out there teaching. I'm not
Yeah.
sure there's any more I can get.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. But boy, what they were, it was a big help to me.
Yeah. Me too. Uh, yeah. Well, so what on your path, I found sometimes that type eights, if I encourage them to learn to meditate, um, that usually doesn't cheer them up very much, and because they're so used to being in action, and so I suggest yoga. You know, at least you're doing something with your body. But do you have a meditation practice, or is it yoga is your practice? What? How do you work with, developing a kind of inner stillness?
I am so blessed because when I graduated high school, my boyfriend, who's my best friend, mother gave me transcendental meditation training for my
Mm.
present.
Oh,
So I learned transcendental meditation when I was 18, and
oh,
I did it, like, and I fell away from it eventually. But so as I was entering college, I already had that with me. Like, what a gift. So, you know, I go through, like, and so everything with Muji, it's it's all meditation. I mean, there's so many different styles and varieties, like the but he does a lot of silent sitting, and like, it's a lot, I would say, probably like Zen, like open and empty.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
it's amazing
mm,
the difference. Like, you know, in some ways, I don't know if you feel this way, like, it's like, gosh, I'm no different. Like, that awareness of myself is the same from when I was 9 years old. But what I'm aware of is different. Like, I can remember, like, my brain just being so much busier and having such a harder time electing what thoughts to pay attention to. And now it's like, oh, yeah,
yeah,
okay, there's that whole stream going again. Like,
yeah,
you know, okay, that I can see why that's going through, and I guess I'm not on that anymore. And it's totally because of years meditating and
yeah,
developing, like, a healthy relationship with all the stimulus that's coming in and out of the human experience all the time.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's been the same for me. I noticed that my head center is quieter than it was 20 years ago, and I get less hooked on thoughts. There comes the river stream. There's a type four. There's usually a couple movies a day where I experience envy for what somebody else appears to have that I don't have, and it's a part of the wiring of the four. I don't even know who they are. They might be suicidal, but there's this little movie that goes through that says they have something you didn't get, and so and I've lived with it long enough that I go, oh, there's the movie. Thank you for sharing, and then I go back to doing what I'm doing, and don't get caught in it. But so it's been a great help. I'm so glad that I started and stuck with it. Uh, so you
So,
mentioned, go ahead.
well, what I'll share is that when I was rereading stuff about the eights, about how we don't like we want to have control of our environment. And I was like, oh my gosh, I even want to have control of my mental environment. Like, so, like, I've got, even in the past, like, since you reached out to me past couple of weeks, I've like, ooh, things have settled down some more, because I would be like, I was much stricter, like, in my head, like, get out of here, like, harsher, like,
Uh-huh.
what's going on here, you know? And just remembering, like, oh no, like, this is not an issue of control, but to just see how that eight pattern can occur at such a subtle level as wanting to control the contents of my mind, which to some people would sound like a very normal endeavor. But what I know to be true is nope. You know what? I sure, to a certain degree, there's some autonomy about what we can choose to pay attention to. But then there's this other stuff. It's just, we're human beings. I mean, it's just churning. There's no control, you know? And so to, like, really relax and just trust that, no, you know what? Like, Guru Kripa Kevalam, like, the guru will take care of it. Life takes care of life. Like, put it in God's hands, however people are comfortable with it. Like, this is not my battle to fight, you know, and but really seeing how like, oh, that's an 8 pattern, really wanting to just be like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm gonna have no thoughts that I don't want to have around here. I never want to think of that thing again. Like, no, it's not gonna happen.
Get out of my head. You don't have
Right.
permission to be in here. That's very interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, are there other, any other sort of things that struck you in the reading that you'd like to share? That,
I think that no, I think that we talked about them. I made a couple notes. Nope.
okay.
But I was so happy. I do just want to say I'm really glad that you reached out to me because one, about that whole truth telling thing is really validating and about just some things happening now. So I'll sit with that. And then, but when you first reached out to me and I read that, it just immediately made me friendlier with myself about control with my mind and just to feel like grateful for like, like this gave me permission to like myself, like in a way, like to,
Mhm.
again, like it's sort of, and help me understand, oh, there's an, like this is balance. This is a very useful way to be. It's not just like a wild horse I have to tame that everyone wishes it was never got into town and now you're just taking care of it. But actually, no, this is a useful way for the human community.
Yeah. Well, that, it's, as my teacher always says to me, you're never going to get rid of your personality. This isn't
Mhm.
kill the personality project. That would be your personality trying to kill your personality. It doesn't,
Right.
it doesn't work, but you can abide with it. You can notice it. You can not be so identified with it. And you can learn more and more that there's personality and hopefully it's in service of essence and your true identity. And that's what you're working for. But getting rid of it is not a good, he said, whatever you try to get rid of, it sticks to you more intensely, like Velcro. So
That's
just
right.
notice and be with it and relax and let go. Um, so, yeah, so I wonder um, if if you had, let's say, a type 8 little boy or little girl, teenager, what what kind of wisdom would you want to share with them? I mean, is there anything in particular that comes up for you that might have helped you when you were a little one?
Ah, just like maybe confirming your energy and your passion is a gift. It truly is. And it's a responsibility.
Mm,
And you will be, you can harness this, for yourself and for others. So I would just say like, so if you're ever feeling like that intensity feels like overwhelming or underappreciated, come and talk to me. I'll remind you that you're perfect the way you are.
mm,
And if you're wanting to kind of find some outlets for it that work for you and feel like it's good for your life, you can talk with someone else who's had to look into some of that.
yeah. Well, it's. I was thinking of one of my favorite eights, Martin Luther King,
Mm,
and when he did that speech, "I Have a Dream," and how it was like a force beyond him just came through his speaking. And we sometimes say that the healthy four has a magnanimous heart. It's like I often say it's mountainous. It's like it comes through, and when a type 8 loves on you, it's like boom. That's the kind of love I have for you. It's like it's fierce and it's alive and and so and then so there's something about a hunger to contribute and have impact on the planet that is also part of the hard wiring of the eight, the healthy eight. And of course, when the eight gets unhealthy, they can actually kind of do the opposite. Like we have a president who I think is an unhealthy eight, and you
mm,
see where it can go in the opposite direction. So it's like our gift can be our curse at the same time. So if you were to like look at your life, it sounds like you got into transformation stuff and have been kind of on that track for a while. Could you say a little bit about that journey that you've been on? Is that something you'd be comfortable with?
Yeah. Anything about it?
Yeah, just like, because it's like, it sounds like that's where some of your type 8 passion was. Like, I want to get to the truth of who I am. I want to find out.
Yes.
I want to rip away the veils. I'm coming through. And so I wondered if that was true for you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I feel like I was born with that kind of urge to know like what's really happening here. Like, I very like I was like praying to God and like had a very big like social concern early,
Mm.
and was like reading um just all kinds of like philosophical type stuff. And then I went to Ecuador when I was 20, and I met with these shamans with John Perkins. I don't know if you know who
Yeah.
John Perkins
Yes,
is.
I do.
This was before he blew up. I was on
Wow.
this 10-person trip with John Perkins.
Wow.
I know. And we went and we visited with these shamans, and I participated in a couple different ayahuasca healing ceremonies.
Mm.
And I was able to ask, I said I was very mental as a kid. I think that's how I protected myself.
Mhm.
And like very like great in school, and just mentally fortified, that thing that you're talking about, being independent and not having my feelings hurt, and a couple of things happened. So I was very mentally fortified. So I went to the ayahuasca healing ceremony, and what I asked for healing was that I knew that these miraculous things could happen, that people could connect with this whole world. I believed, I just didn't think it could happen for me. I just felt like there's something fundamentally wrong with me. I'm too like heady or something. And so I asked for healing with that. Like, God bless that somehow I had the awareness that this was an issue, and that I couldn't reconcile what I knew was possible for others, that it could actually happen for me. And I asked for help with that. And I got it. And so I had this direct experience of being like very deeply loved and healed and seen, and feeling like connection. I mean, that ayahuasca healing lasted for 5 years. I'll say that. I mean,
Wow.
it's totally helps. I mean, that's like,
Mm.
it was such a blessing. And
Mm.
so from there, like that kind of set the pattern. So I would know when I was getting off course, um, with whatever it was, I would keep going. I knew to go back to, wait, who am I? I'm like caught up in something like worldly or social. I'm feeling like it's me versus the world. I'm in a scarcity mentality, like
Mhm.
something I've gotten caught up in something. And I would then go look for a teacher, guide, some kind of modality to reel me back in. And then basically when I finally got to like yoga, and I was practicing a lot with Alice over at Portland Power Yoga, I said to her, I want to be a yoga teacher. And she said, you got to work on your like victim stuff.
Mhm.
If you go to the Landmark Forum, you can teach for me.
Oh, yeah.
And so I went to the Landmark Forum, and it was like I totally got it,
Yeah.
that I had these cognitive patterns of how I was arranging information that were so deeply embedded in me,
Mm.
like that. And it just happened from like in like 6 years, I don't know, but that but that was like my first like major transformation work, and doing the Landmark work about really kind of like, who am I? I'm not at the effect of the world. I am the creator of this world, just like everybody else here, just like everybody else, and this isn't like, you don't even have to be spiritual. This is just life. And it like really helped me get grounded. So, and then like from there, I've just keep being attracted to um, teachers and experiences that remind us of who we really are. We are creating this experience. We're not, everything is happening for us, not to us. And I've sort of built my whole life around like being around people like that, and being in communities where this at least resonates, even if people aren't all on board, that there's a friendliness to this kind of approach,
Yeah.
and let go of people that are kind of still caught up in trauma reenactment and bless them, but I don't really form close relationships with them.
Well, it's interesting. Gurdjieff brought the Enneagram to the West in 1910 through 25, and I don't have the precise date, but he had the sense that the world was going to be coming to a turning point where all the gains that have been made could be lost, or if enough people became awake and aware that they could be intuitively receptive to higher intelligence, vibration, intuitional guidance. He said, but it's going to be a close call. And he had one of his foremost students, a guy named J.G. Bennett, in 1970, had the same intuition. He said, and where the shit's going to hit the fan is in the year 2020. So all of you must begin. He sent out a message you must keep working on your awareness and presence and appreciation of the ecology and kindness towards others. He says, but 2020 is when you're going to see the ego rise to full-blown activity. And so prepare for it so that you can hopefully be a conduit for something higher than your ego structure, right? And so I just think it's interesting, we're in 2020 and it's like, yeah, there's a lot of shit flying through the air like we've never seen before. And the ecological crisis is sounding, a siren. It's real. And so it's like all hands on deck. Whoever can play ball here, jump in. And so it's interesting that particular, I'm always struck by the work of the Enneagram and where it came from in terms of the intention, which was to really inspire enough people to do inner work and develop a kind of compassion for folks who are asleep, but also to take initiative on what they're called to. So, what better deal could we have than to be living in these times?
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that about the Enneagram. And I don't know that much about Gurdjieff, but I remember the story that Pema Chodron has talked about him, about how all these students were out there in the grass and like doing some kind of job out there in the yard. There was this one guy that was always complaining. And then something like they got rid of the guy, and then Gurdjieff drove off to like bring him back to them, and they were like, like why would you? He's like, oh no, I keep him here. Somehow it's like I'm not telling the story very good, but this lesson in humility about just kind of like working with each, and it always struck me as like, everything is for us. We need to pay attention and not like turn our backs and get on our high horse. We need to keep like aware of everything.
Well, he had evidently a philosophy that it was important to have somebody in the community that stepped on everybody's corns.
Yes.
And that because they did that, it created a friction for people to become aware and be present. And he said it's like you need to have a constant reminding factor, like a stone in your shoe, to bring you back to the moment. And this guy here, he's perfect. I'm paying him to stay here.
That's right. That's what I'm paying. That's right. That was the line. I'm paying him. Oh my gosh.
And everybody's going, well, we're getting triggered. He says, that's awesome. Triggering's good. You need to work on yourself. So anyway, that's beautiful wisdom. Mm-hmm. So, well, gosh, it's just a pleasure really to spend time with you. And
yes, and thank you, Michael. It was really nice to reconnect with you and to have such a uplifting dialogue. I appreciate it. Thanks for reaching out.
Absolutely. And hope to reconnect again down the road at some point, but just sending you lots of love and lots of blessings and gratitude. And I will get this recorded, and then I'll point you to it so you can go watch yourself. And okay. Yeah, so many blessings to you. And
thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much. It's just
all right.
Awesome to be with you. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.